Okay, let's begin. It's 5:59, almost 6. We're
Okay.
just about there. This is public hearing case 2024A, 530 Glendale Road, agricultural ground-mounted solar facility. Continued from May 22nd, 2024. I have some things to read that I'm sure you're heard before, some of the legal documentation that needs to be read. So let me begin with that. Let me introduce the planning board members, myself, Pat Coyne, the chair, Christina Brodeur, David Demers, and Joe Sibilia, and Joanne Fiore is our coordinator. The statement of authority, the planning board is established under Chapter 40A of the general laws of Massachusetts and acts in compliance with Chapter 40A under the zoning bylaws of the town of Hampden. Chapter 41 governing the submission and approval of plots of proposed subdivisions and the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Hampden, Massachusetts. This is a continuance from May 22nd, 2024 on the application of Glendale Road Development LLC for a special permit under section 7.16 solar energy systems of the Hampden zoning bylaw to allow the construction of a 4.92 megawatt ground-mounted solar facility coupled with energy storage and associated access driveways, site grading and utilities located at 530 Glendale Road. The facility will be an agricultural ground-mounted system where the interior arrays will be maintained as pasture fields, grazing sheep, cattle, and chickens, managed by Ledge Valley Farm, who is already established at the site. Information related to this application is on file in the town clerk's office and is available for review by the public during normal business hours. For the board, Madison Pixley Chair, Hampden Planning Board, published in the Wilbraham Hampden Times, February 8th and February 15th, 2024. We have the applicant on Zoom, Roy Walker. He is from 0 Point Energy Consultants, and also his attorney, Adam Costa, is joining us this evening.
Can they hear us?
And I assume everyone can hear sufficiently. Thank you. So it is the planning board's understanding that the applicant seeks to withdraw his petition without prejudice. The board must vote on whether to grant the applicant permission to withdraw without prejudice. If the planning board votes in favor, the applicant can restart any time. If the planning board votes against granting permission, the applicant can still withdraw, but does so with prejudice and must wait 2 years to refile. Our town council, Rose Crawley, has advised that it's not unusual for a special permit applicant to be withdrawn without prejudice. So that being said, for this evening's purposes, I need a motion and.
Ask the applicant to
Pardon?
the applicant.
Yeah, we can ask the applicant if there's anything to add at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Adam Costa with me, Tellerman and Costa, representing 0 Point, and Mr. Walker, who's joining me by Zoom and joining you by Zoom tonight as well. Thank you for your summary. You've stated all of that accurately. We are requesting to withdraw the application without prejudice. As I think board members are probably aware, we made applications both to the planning board and to the Conservation Commission for the solar project. The Conservation Commission proceedings proceeded over the course of several sessions of a public hearing. But just last week, the public hearing was closed and we were denied an order of conditions by the Conservation Commission. So we have a number of options as it relates to that denial. We can choose to revise the project and resubmit to the commission. We can choose to abandon the project. We can choose to file one or more appeals under the Wetlands Protection Act or the town's local wetlands bylaw. We've been discussing those options amongst ourselves. But the reality is that we know one way or the other. What we are unlikely to be doing is to be proceeding with the same project in the exact same form as it has currently been submitted to the planning board. So we did talk, Rory and I, about continuing these proceedings in an effort to gain the board's approval, only to later come back and possibly modify that approval. But to be candid, that seemed like a bit of a waste of not only our time, but your time and the time of those who have who attended the first session of the public hearing and who would be required to attend future sessions of the public hearing as well. So the right thing to do, the most efficient thing to do seemed to be to withdraw the application and again, go back to the drawing board and what the future might bring, we don't currently know. But at this time, we don't intend to pursue the current application or the current project in its present form.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Costa. So at this point, I would ask, I need a motion and a second to grant the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice. Someone to grant the,
I move that we approve the applicant's request to withdraw his application without prejudice.
I'll second that.
and a second.
Vote.
Well, are there gonna be a chance for some questions, or is it with this? Pat, what's the protocol?
Well,
It was made on.
if there were questions, it would be more procedural.
Huh?
These are questions to the board, or if you had questions to the applicant.
No, I have procedural questions,
Okay,
right? Let me see if I understand this. If the applicant, if we vote to withdraw his position, his petition without prejudice, then they can refile it at any time, right? And if we vote against granting the permission, the applicant could still withdraw, but with prejudice, but must wait 2 years to file. So if we vote on without prejudice, I think my next question would be to the attorney for the applicant on if we vote against granting permission, is they're still going to withdraw? Is that my understanding?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
excuse me?
Could I address that through you?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So I'm not sure that we would still withdraw. So the objective here would be to give us an opportunity, as I mentioned before, to go back to the drawing board and to consider options for this site, if there are remaining options in light of the Conservation Commission action. It may very well be that if we opt to, let's say, appeal the Conservation Commission's denial, that appellate process, both with DEP and eventually in the courts, could take more than a year or 2 years, in which case the nature of the withdrawal of this application more or less becomes a moot point. But one option that's available to the board, or one outcome that is possible that wasn't mentioned at the outset of this meeting, is we're seeking a withdrawal without prejudice. If the board votes against that and determines that it won't allow that withdrawal to occur, I think that what we would probably do, certainly what I would advise my client to do, is simply require the board to make a decision on the merits. Now, without us further prosecuting the project and without you having further meetings on topic, I suspect that would be a denial, and we would then appeal that denial, which simply means more litigation for us and more litigation for you. I think in recognition of that reality, it's the reason that most boards, in my experience, will allow these withdrawals without prejudice to occur. Applicants can actually withdraw without prejudice, even without the permission of the board, up until the time when the public hearing notice is placed in the newspaper. But once the public hearing process gets underway, the statute requires that we get permission from the board, which is why we're asking for that. Another point to make is that this concept of 2 years, where there's a freeze between the date of a decision on the merits, in other words, with prejudice, and the date of a future application, it's not that the applicant is prohibited from reapplying within 2 years. It's that there's an additional statute, it's a part of the Zoning Act, Chapter 48, Section 16, that speaks of what is referred to as repetitive applications. And in an effort to avoid a circumstance where an applicant is making repetitive applications, it requires that there be specific and material changes to the project. But if so long as there are specific and material changes, an applicant can still reapply within the 2-year period. So it's really, in many respects, practically speaking, even though the legalities can be somewhat confusing, there's not a whole lot of practical difference between a withdrawal without prejudice and otherwise. But it's routine, as you've acknowledged, as I think your town council has acknowledged, it's routine for applicants to ask for withdrawals without prejudice. So they're essentially put back in the position they were in when they began the application process.
And that's clear to me. Now, my next question is procedurally, how would it be clear for the residents that are gathered here, for them to ask a question before we vote, so they're clear, or is that not appropriate? When do they get to ask
They
it?
could ask a question. If
Before we vote?
they can, yes,
Okay. Is everybody on
to the board.
A little complicated, but I
It's a little
think so.
complicated. Basically, we're gonna grant them this, and they're gonna have to fight the Department of Environmental Protection. Then they're gonna come back to us to start from step one.
But I do have a question. So Gina Stabilo, 219. So if they're gonna start this process over, then all that would have to be in the paper, butters have to be notified again. Okay.
Yeah, and they'll significantly change this so they can try to get it.
I just want to make sure people are notified. That was my big concern. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I can't
Oh,
answer.
okay.
Look, you're gonna have to talk to the chairman.
Darla Ivacoli, 560 Woodville Road.
Mhm.
So does this mean when they start over that it's with a brand new plan or the plan that was submitted?
It's gonna have,
They stated,
So-
he stated on the thing that they're gonna come up with a new plan for the future, so it may not be as large scale, might be a smaller scale. They're gonna redo it so they can kind of go around the conservation for the land.
No,
I'm prepared to vote now, Mr. Chairman.
do I need to redo the motion?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
redo the motion, please.
I move that we approve the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice.
And I will second that.
Well, roll call.
Roll call.
Okay.
Pat Coyne, yes.
Christina Brodeur, yes.
Dave Demers, yes.
Joe Sibilia, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, 4-0.
The motion passes. Withdrawal without prejudice.
Thank you. We appreciate your time tonight.
I need a motion to
Okay. No. All right, so we're gonna close the public
close.
hearing.
Yeah, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close public hearing for case 2024A.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
I'll type up that denial decision within the next 2 weeks and file it with the town clerk. You'll get a copy.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you,
Okay,
Chairman.
thank
Thank you,
you.
members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Is that, what do you mean? Denial decision? Huh? Denial decision. Withdrawal without
Oh,
prejudice.
okay, withdraw. Okay.
Withdrawal. Withdraw, yeah. What?
Is that, it?
That's it.
Motion to adjourn, though.
We did,
We did.
we did.
Close the public
We
hearing.
closed the
So
public.
there's no
closed the-
regular meeting.
Yeah. we closed it.